Hi, my name's Emily, and today I'm going to be discussing the student and teacher relationships in the film EDSE, and how these relationships affect student identity. For those who have not seen the film, EDSE follows the experience of a high school girl named Olive who makes a quick transition from being someone who is quiet and unnoticed by her peers to someone who is outspoken, mentioned in daily conversations, and perceived as a promiscuous girl. How did this transition happen? In a simple combination of a white lie and the high school communication system, Olive became the most talked about girl at school. In what Olive thought to be a private conversation, she lied to her best friend about becoming intimate with a college student. After this lie spread among her high school peers, Olive began to dress in suggestive attire. In a unique situation, boys who would have been deemed unpopular in the school community started approaching Olive to make an arrangement where she would agree to starting a rumor about herself of participating in fake sexual acts in exchange for money, gift cards, coupons, etc. Following this sequence of events, I will analyze and discuss peer relationships of students and student-teacher relationships within the film. Today I'm going to discuss two subcategories of peer relationships. First are the female relationships. There was a unique shift in how the female community treated Olive after discovering that she was sexually active. An almost immediate reaction from all other high school girls was to alienate, bully, and discriminate against Olive. Though not all girls responded negatively right away, like her best friend, who was at first accepting of Olive's alleged actions, eventually all high school girls saw Olive in the same light. The female community regarded Olive's promiscuousness as negative.
To let her know that everyone, and I do mean everyone, is calling her a dirty skank.
Well, do you think I'm a dirty skank?
You know, I didn't want to believe it, but I guess it's true. That is your identifier.
The second subcategory of peer relationships is the female-male relationship. There are a lot of changes that adolescents go through, including physical, emotional, and cognitive development. These changes begin the process of sexual maturation in adolescence. Thus, sexual attraction is a very relevant issue for high school students. Olive's transition into the promiscuous student saw an exponential increase in attention from her male counterparts. I would like to note that the film gave minimal attention to other sexual orientations and chose to focus more or less on the romantic relationships between males and females. The attention that Olive received from her male peers was strictly of a sexual nature. Even one of her male friends, who identified as gay, approached Olive for the favor of lying about performing a sexual act. It is in these actions among the male community that demonstrated to viewers that males who participated in sexual acts were regarded very highly within the school community. So, how did this affect Olive? Olive's peers were the ones defining her identity and only saw her for the alleged actions in which she was participating. Olive became very alone and her self-esteem dropped significantly. According to the APA Task Force on the Sexualization of Girls, the widespread sexualization of girls in our society plays a major role in the deterioration of girls' mental health. Sexualization occurs when a person's main value is attributed to their sexual appearance, rather than their intelligence or other qualities. Though Olive was provoking her peers by perpetuating false rumors and acting and dressing promiscuously, her identity was significantly restricted by how others perceived her. There were moments where Olive tried to explain the falsity of the situation and regain her previous reputation. However, the conclusions Olive's peers made were too influential to allow Olive to reclaim and define her own identity. I found this to be an interesting dynamic because I perceive identity to be something that should be in an individual's control. In reality, society and the surrounding community is very influential in defining an individual's identity. In an interview conducted by a psychologist called Pickard, an adolescent shared his or her experience of independence and society. I expected independence meant finally being old enough to live life how I wanted. But no, I can't live on my own terms because now I have to live on society's terms. The micro-society of Olive's high school is a perfect example of how others can control individuals' identity, and Olive was such person that experienced the strict unwritten rules of society. Why does this matter to teachers? It is important as teachers to be aware of the social dynamic between students. Through observation, teachers can become aware of the students who are being negatively affected by the school's community. Like Olive, who was drowning in a false identity assigned by her peers and who was unable to display her genuine identity. There are two ways in which teachers can be proactive in assisting students to claim ownership over their identity. First, staying in tune with the student community assists teachers in making observations of student interactions. Second, teachers can familiarize themselves with students' unique interests, talents, and passions through culturally responsive teaching. By knowing your students on a personal level, not purely an academic one, you as a teacher can be more sensitive to signs of a student undergoing an identity crisis or even suppression. I'd like to move into a discussion of the second relationship I identified in the film, which are teacher-student relationships. The relationships Olive had with her teachers were very formal. I agree that a level of professionalism needs to be maintained between students and teachers, but not to the point that it blinds teachers from recognizing that their students need help. There is one teacher-student relationship in particular from the film that I would like to discuss. The English teacher, Mr. Griffith, was Olive's favorite teacher and was someone who Olive highly respected. Mr. Griffith was a teacher who knew what students should and should not be participating in order to lead a healthy and positive life. However, Mr. Griffith did not engage students on a personal level. He was not culturally responsive. When addressing issues that could be considered personal, like doing drugs or being sexually active, Mr. Griffith was awkward and provided trivial advice to students. Though Mr. Griffith attempted to reach out to Olive by asking her the motivation behind her change in appearance, Mr. Griffith never investigated further and accepted Olive's excuse at face value.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Don't forget tomorrow's Earth Day.
I believe Mr. Griffith was blatantly ignorant to the student dynamics happening within his classroom, and ultimately allowed poor student decisions and a negative environment to permeate the classroom and school community. Why does this matter to teachers? Adolescent sexuality can be an awkward conversation to have with students, but this topic needs to be openly discussed in order to prevent poor decision-making and even delinquent actions. Adolescents are growing into their bodies and emotions. It is important that they have a trusting, level-headed guide to answer questions and raise flags when decisions have the potential to put students' well-being at risk. This is a responsibility we have as educators. Unlike Mr. Griffith, who did not take action when he knew something was amiss, we as teachers need to intervene and provide positive mentorship to students, like Olive, who display abnormal attitudes. I must note that I do not mean intervention in the sense that a teacher strides in announcing to the student that you're making so many mistakes and this is how you must fix them. No. According to psychologist Collard Pickard, adolescence begins with the rebellion against authority. So for a teacher who can symbolize an authority, to use strong intervention methods would only result in a stronger rebellious response from the student. In addition, excessive help and support denudes students of the opportunity to think for themselves. It stops them having to work through difficulties or solve problems. So, though adolescent well-being in all its forms is a responsibility we have as educators to maintain, it is still important to make students aware that you are available simply as a guide or a support as necessary, not as an overpowering force intervening in their life. So thanks for listening to my screencast. In discussing the film EDSE, I hope you gain some insights into the relationships that exist in a school community and how those relationships can impact students.